History laid the foundation
that informs our conversation. Welcome to the classroom.
From the church to the streets, and even in the suites, and all around the world. I'm gonna keep it real in the classroom.
Fannie Lou's classroom. Fannie Lou's classroom. Fannie Lou's classroom.
Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Fannie Lou's Classroom. This is our final episode of season 4. We're super excited to be wrapping up this season. Been a credible season, amazing guests, all types of topics and conversations that are relevant to our individual lives as well as our communal lives. And we're super excited about this season, how it went down. So let me jump right in and thank the crew that made it all possible. We want to thank Brooke for handling all of our audio-visual needs. And then, of course, we always want to give a shout out to Cheryl and Shanika, who make sure they do everything possible to get us prepped and ready from week to week. And so make sure you share this with your friends. Tell them to like us on Instagram, like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Fannie Lou's Classroom, and also hit the notification bell so you can be alerted whenever we go live. And so before I jump into that today, I want to pick up where I left off last week. And I want to keep encouraging all those young college students who are, standing on their moral authority, and they are some of them risking it all to take a stand against the genocide that is happening in Gaza. And, because a lot of the mainstream media and even some of our leaders are being disparaging to what the young people are doing. But I want to just keep encouraging those young people to speak their truth, stand on their moral authority, and call out the genocidal policies of this country and many other European nations. And so we support them. And I'm so excited for them to be doing what they're doing in this moment in time, in this Kairos moment for them, that they would risk it all in order to make sure that real justice and equity takes place in a world that's, bent on really dehumanizing and really wiping out the face of those they deem to be marginalized and not fully human. So I salute them, and the young journalists on these college campuses who are finding ways to tell the truth about what is happening, to counter the false narratives, the misinformation and disinformation that's being circulated about not just Gaza and how they're connecting dots to the Sudan, to the Congo, et cetera. So I'm super proud of them. So I just want to make sure I say that, because I think in the spirit of Fannie Lou Hamer, she too is proud of what they are doing by way of being in the streets and really taking a stand against white savagery and the ways in which it continues to rear its head all over this globe. So today, this is May. It's Mental Health Awareness Month. And so I thought today, to conclude our season 4, would be really good for us in light of not just what we see in our own communities, but in the global communities, all of the violence and the trauma. Colin was trying to get in. Can you check him? So all the violence that we are seeing happen around us, I just felt it might be important for us to really attend to our souls, our spirits. And so not to discount the need for therapists, psychiatrists, counselors, and psychologists. I believe that there's still something to how we can find healing in rituals and really connecting to our ancestral roots and ways of knowing and ways of being. And so we have an incredible guest on the show today. She is my friend, she is my sister, and she, as you will see in a matter of moments, is absolutely amazing. I wanted to have her on the show to talk about, the role that rituals can play in our healing, but also the importance and necessity of us making sure we are not afraid of our native tongue, and that also that we are not afraid of really being able to connect to our African ways of knowing and African ways of being. I think that's so important. And so I'm super excited to have Dr. Melva Sampson with us on today. So I'm going to read a brief introduction. You can read her full bio on the description on today's episode. So Dr. Melva L. Sampson is a professor, preacher, and pastor. She is assistant teaching professor in the practice of preaching and practical theology at Wake Forest University School of Divinity. Her ministerial credentials span across the Baptist and Presbyterian USA denominations. Her research interests include Black preaching women's embodiment, African heritage spiritual traditions, Black Girls in Ritual Performance, and the relationship between digital proclamation and spiritual formation. She has published articles like The Making of Digital Griots in Cyber Assemblies and Digital Hush Harbors, Black Preaching Women in Black Digital Religious Networks. Each address the politics of location and challenge traditional Black church pulpit authority. Dr. Melva's published sermons appear in the final collection of Dr. Ella Pearson Mitchell's Those Preaching Women, a multicultural edition, and The Sky is Crying, Race, Class, and Natural Disaster. She's a leading practitioner in digital Black religion and is the creator of the Pink Robe Chronicles, an online spiritual gathering that circumvents interlaced oppressive religious structures, doctrines, and theologies by utilizing womanist and Afrocentric, Afrofuturistic values of resistance, recovery, reflection to curate a liberated and transformative faith-centered community of practice. Her book by the same name will be out in 2025 under 15-7 Media. Dr. Melva earned her Bachelor of Arts degree in History and Political Science from Virginia Union University, a Master of Arts in Mass Communication from Howard University, and a Master of Divinity from Chandler School of Theology, Emory University, and a Doctorate of Philosophy in Religion with a concentration in homiletics from the Graduate Division of Religion at Emory University. Let's welcome Dr. Melva Sampson to Fannie Lou's classroom. So just reading her bio, you already know we are set up to have an amazing time today and a really rich conversation that I hope would just simply lead you down many rabbit holes to be more liberated and to really be able to understand your faith in a new way that I think can help in the process of healing that we all look for in many different ways and for many different reasons. So that's her bio, but I just want to say that Dr. Melva is for me, she's just a good human being. When you lay aside all her credentials, she's a loving person. I've seen the ways in which she's come through for community, for people who are in need. And I'm going to talk about this a little later in the show, and I'm going to talk about the way that she laid me out on the floor at Howard University. Some years ago, my introduction to Melva was I think Dr. Sampson, we met each other at the carousel getting our luggage at the airport. I think right. So we were there for
correct.
Dr. Angelique Walker Smith was holding her Pan-African Women of Faith, and you met me at the carousel, and we connected there. And you were just so warm and friendly to me, and I was like, "Well, let's get a cab." She said, "No, we're getting ready to get on this train." So, we walked through, D.C. up to Howard. And I think from that point on, you have always been someone that I looked up to, who I admire, and who I just really love to see grow and flourish. And then to see you under Mama Itihari, who's been on the show a couple of times. People have been introduced to her a couple of times now. And so I just want to say that I love you, and I really do appreciate all you meant to me and continue to mean to me as I watch you from afar and up close and personal. So I just want to share that personal note about Dr. Sampson before we jump right in. So welcome to the show, Dr. Sampson.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I love you too, and I appreciate the work that you're doing. I am a fan of Fannie Lou's classroom, not only a fan, but absolutely a student. So I thank you so much for this opportunity.
Oh, we got you live. Yay. Okay, you're up. The people can see you. Yes, I need to be able to see that beautiful face. Yes. There you are. Yes. I love that shirt. Yes, there you go.
Thank you.
So one of the things that we always, and I think we had you here maybe a few years ago when it may have been during our lecture series perhaps, but I know we set up several rooms where you had different rituals in each room for people
Correct.
to go into and be introduced, because we wanted to find ways to really, for a lot of us, particularly at Friendship West, and I'm sure some other congregations who cannot demonize, right, what they don't. They demonize what they don't know, and it's a way in which we try to begin to educate and liberate people to see their faith more broader than what they are, how they understand it, and how they understand connecting with God as well, right? And so we did that some years ago, and the people who went through really enjoyed it, right? And I wish you would have kept that, we meaning us here, not you with us, finding ways to really keep that up. And I thought it'd be a good time to just step into the classroom day and just to become a student of really looking at rituals as a way of healing, but given the history of why those rituals are important and what people can just do practically. And I think in many ways people can see the ways that you already do ritual. You don't call it that, but we do it. And so how we might be able to, bring people into that and see that in a different way so they can understand and maybe not be so tense and anxious when we start saying things like ritual, honoring our ancestors, pulling on our ancestors, having the Sankofa moments, etc. So I really want you to do what you do, but I'll just kind of ask some just starter questions and we'll get that going. So just in general, just tell us about your ritual work in general, like what you do, how you came into this work, the training you even received under Mama Itahari, et cetera, to get us started.
Thank you. Again, thank you for having me. I know that before I knew what that kind of office was, early in my vocation, early in my vocation, right after my first master's degree, I managed a nonprofit educational program at a place called the Washington Center for Internships and Academic Seminars. And I ran a program then, the word minority was used. It was called the Minority Leaders Fellowship Program. And in that program, diverse representations of folk from all over would come from their universities and colleges to Washington, D.C., to our program to be placed in an internship and then in public service. And then while there, they would have to go through a leadership program and they would receive their college credit. And so while there, I was charged with doing this week-long leadership development program. I did not really know what I wanted to do, how I would do it. I wasn't well versed in leadership styles. And so the leadership style that I chose was servant leadership. And so the first ritual that I can remember anyway, significantly, is I led this very diverse group, from agnostic to atheist to Jehovah Witness to Muslim to Christian and various denominations and sects within Christianity. I led them through this foot washing ritual as an act of humility and what is required to lead, and how we invite people to lead with us. And it wasn't until years later that I recognized and realized how I was tapping into an inner knowing, tapping into a way of being, tapping in actually to that ritualistic life. That this is what I was doing. And so years later, when I had the opportunity, years and years later, when I had the opportunity to begin walking with Dr. Mama Itihari Toure, while a member at First African Church and so many others, and now living and walking in with her in the House of Toure, I tell you that it is how to describe it is, I won't say it's innate, but it is a place of comfort. It is something that is not foreign, and I imagine that it is not foreign for a lot of us, that a lot of us have these ways of being that some of us could trace them back to the people we learned them from. Some of us just know, we just hear, do this, do that, and we don't know where it comes from, but we just do it. Rituals aren't the ways in which we have been socialized. Well, we're just going to go here early. You didn't ask me this question.
Go there, yeah.
Reverend, but I'm going to just move forward. The way that we've been socialized, particularly I want to talk about in the Christian tradition, of which I am licensed and ordained to speak. We often talk about ritual as problematic, as spooky, as antithetical to the Christian faith. But I want to share with you friends, that Christianity is filled with ritual. It is nothing but ritual. It is ritualistic. There is no practice that we engage in that tradition that is not rooted and based in what? A ritual. From the Holy Communion or Eucharist or the Lord's table or the Lord's Supper, however your denomination or practice speaks to it, to baptism, to other kinds of processes like licensing and ordination. Those are ritual practices, right? And so it has just been important for me to really reconnect with those practices unapologetically.
So thank you for that, because I think that serves as a good grounding and foundation for the conversation, because I really would like to then move into talking about, well, when I think about, and one of the reasons, let me back up. So when we had you come to Friendship West, part of that was, hey, what are some, in light of all that people are dealing with, this is way before COVID, and I mean, the world is so different now, just from even when you came the last time. The level of, I think we've always lived in a world of violence, but for me, I think it has been exacerbated. Like, it just seems like violence seems to be all around us in various systems, whether that's the family system you find yourself in, whether that's a corporate structure at church, right, et cetera. And it seems as though the way that we express how those systems impact us seems to be more visible to me. I could have been missing it all this time, but it just seems more visible, even, and maybe social media is part of that, because now a lot of stuff is filmed, right? We see everything in real time, and oftentimes in the 24-hour cycle, consistently images that we see and what we hear. And so if we could just maybe just talk about what are some of the ways. And again, I'm not discounting counselors, therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, but I'm wondering, what are some of the ways that we can begin to look to some African ways of knowing and ways of being that can be beneficial for us to receive healing, to get on the pathway to healing?
Thank you. That's a good question. So, to be clear, ritual works alongside of your therapist, your clinical, and if you have a good therapist, like I've had good therapists, therapists who use ritual with their clinical practice, and so that is important. I want to reiterate that ritual, in the words of Malidoma Some, and Sabonso Some, rituals are for the community. We engage in rituals all the time. Rituals mark time. Rituals mark death. They mark life. They mark graduation. When we have funerals, it is a ritual. When we go to a graduation, when we see people participate in graduation ceremonies and they walk across the stage to pomp and circumstance, it is a ritual. So there are many different types of marriage. It is a ritual. There are various kinds of rituals. And it is important for us to really depathologize many of our African-centered spiritual and religious traditions and to retrieve them back from the hands of white supremacy, to retrieve them back from the hands of cultural hegemony, in which it was purposeful. It was purposeful to create a void in enslaved African people who were forced to come to these Americas and to attempt to beat them down as such, beat them down, beat them out of their way of knowing and being, beat them down, dehumanize them out of their understanding of the Creator, and to beat them down of many of their cultures and traditions, so that a void was created. And in place of that void, what those who were force feeding this kind of missionary Christianity, evangelical Christianity, what they did was in place of that void, place their own ways of being and understanding and knowing. So to take a people's culture, to take a people's history, to take a people's beliefs are the key thing one does to oppress a people. And so I am offering before any and everything an opportunity for us to engage in a ritual of Sankofa, to go back and get what has been taken, to go back and get what was lost. Black people in this country did not come to this country as empty slates. We came to this country with a very complex spiritual systems, multiple spiritual systems, Ashe, of which knowledge and understanding of Jesus or Yeshua was already in play. And so rituals become important in this space and our time right now, because rituals are not only individual, but broadly and mostly, moreover, for the community.
Mm-hmm.
To engage in a ritual is a communal practice. You never go to do a ritual because you just want to rectify what's happening with you. You go to a ritual, and to do a ritual, perform a ritual, engage a ritual, because you want to rectify what's happening in the community. For instance, case in point, in the Christian faith, when we go to the ritual of the table of the Lord's Supper, we are doing this in remembrance of that, that revolutionary.
Mm-hmm.
We are engaging in this ritual in remembrance of the walk that he walked, in remembrance of, yes, his lynching, but also of his life, recognizing that because we are connected to him, that the same power, the same divinity that was in him is also in us. But when we go to the table, we don't go to the table alone. We go bringing
Right.
the entire collective communal body with us, Ashe. There is a way in which we have been formed, and in that forming, we have been sold the lie that this has to do with our own soul salvation, that this rectifies us. It is incorrect. The Lord's table, the supper as a ritual, rectifies the body, not an individual. And in terms of this notion, you didn't ask this, but I'm going down this road anyway. It rectifies this notion that salvation is an individual practice.
Right.
And it helps us to understand that via ritual.
Hold on, Dr. Cindy. Did you hit your mute button? We want to hear all of this. We can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
Now we can. You're back. Yes. Man, keep going. Yeah, I want us to get all of it. That's why I wanted to keep going. I wanted to stop you because I don't want us to miss what you're saying.
Okay, well, let me run back.
Run back.
To
Yes.
Ritual and
yes. Please do.
And salvation. I see there's a little lag in mine, so I'm gonna just run it back a little bit. I was saying that for these rituals, so that I'm using the ritual of communion. I'm using communion as an example of a ritual, and what I'm running down here is that ritual is not for an individual purpose. That ritual is to lighten and lift the community. Ritual is an initiatory practice, of which, if we look at the Lord's Supper or communion, whatever you call it in your tradition, if we look at the Lord's Supper, it is an initiatory practice. It is a ritual, but it is not solely for a ritual so that we can individually be saved. This salvation mean that we want to live forever, that we, because we have believed that now we are never dying, we are living. That is not necessarily the understanding of salvation. Salvation is being liberated from the fear of death. And so if we engage in a ritual practice of the Lord's table, if in the plate, then what we are saying is we are ingesting, Ashe, we are ingesting the same divinatory power. We are ingesting both the liquid and the solid as representations of blood and body. And we are saying, we are calling forth your Ashe, your spirit, your presence, your power to walk with us. So how fitting it is in this system, in this moment, in this day and this time, that when violence is amok in the same way violence was amok at the lynching of Yeshua, that we would engage in ritual practices, not for our own saving, but for the collective saving. So rituals help to ground us. Rituals fortify us, not only in a tradition, but in a community. Rituals join together spirits and flesh. Rituals join together space and time. Rituals help us to transcend space and time, so that in the midst of, for folk, I'm thinking of the very committed activist Sister Mary Hooks down in Atlanta. The name of her organization is leaving me. I think it is for the lives of Black people. I think it's something like that. But Mary Hooks and others who are organizing and who are every single day protesting with their bodies, putting their bodies on the line against the building of Cop City in Atlanta, Georgia. I imagine, because I know Mary is a ritualist, right? That part of Mary's daily ritual is not just sort of the way we know how to speak and call protection over ourselves, but putting her hand in the dirt, ingesting water and calling life to water so that it enlivens her, right? Singing songs, singing movement songs, singing as a kind of ritual act. We need these alongside our therapy because they keep us connected to the legacy and to the
Yes.
lineage.
And thank you for using, as you whatever we call in our tradition here, we call it the Lord's Supper and communion. But I think it's so important to use something everybody's familiar with and to really expand on what it really means to come to that table, which that's a whole nother show because there's a lot to say about that. Yes. But thank you for using that because I want us to begin to see you do this already. You may not call it that, but you do that already. Now,
listen, baptism is a water ritual. It is so at least in the Christian sacred text, they trace it back to a Jewish water ritual. But we can trace water rituals to various indigenous ways of knowing and being, to various indigenous spiritual practices. Water rituals don't begin with Christianity, and they don't begin with Judaism. They begin with indigenous traditions of what the property of water means and what it does. So for those who have been baptized, for those who desire to be baptized, whether you are immersed or whether you are sprinkled, that is a ritual.
Right. Right. I love this because I think it's so important for us to really, it helps to demystify or destigmatize, right? When we say words like, oh, ritual, it just automatically goes to something else. Like, well, you already do that. So that's why this is so exciting. I love the way you're breaking it down and connecting those dots, I think are so just important. So talk to it, because you said Sankofa is a ritual and is. So what are some of the things, what is the one thing I'm sure it's more than one, I know it's more than one, that we need to look back and to fetch when you think about what could be helpful for us as community, in terms of communal healing, maybe I can say it that way, in light of all that we know we're up against. Let me just say this, even here, at Friendship West, and Shanika's here. She is she's on staff here as well. She's the administrative assistant and you got a long title, administrative assistant and program coordinator. We do all things as Black women. We not only do it all, we create what it is we're going to be and do. But she can testify that the number of calls, emails, etc., that we get of people who are hurting, who have been violated through structural violence or physical violence. And it's nonstop, right? And so many times, like I tell her, you have to also make sure that you are doing something to really take care of yourself in the moment too. Because if you constantly are hearing and taking that in and trying to help, as we say in church, you can't pour from an empty jar. So what is a ritual that we may reach back and fetch that can help us to not only be a benefit to our community, but how we become community as we're helping one another, but we are also being replenished and not allowing ourselves to be drained in the helping and trying to help others on a pathway to healing, that we don't neglect ourselves in that process?
So there's the ritual and then there's the practice. Some of us need to first, before we can do a ritual, engage in the practice. And the practice here, for example, would be Sankofa. So Sankofa is the practice, and then we create a ritual to acknowledge the practice, right? So Christianity is the practice, and the Lord's Supper is the ritual. Christianity is the practice, and the baptism is the ritual. There are several different, so I want to be clear also to know that ritual is also not like it's not like a genie in a bottle. It's not like a one size fits all. You create rituals depending on what is needed. Dr. Ture, Mama Itihari, talks often about one, ritual is not created alone. And so if you okay, let me back up a little bit because I want to make sure that I'm giving you all a correct. So one of the things that Dr. Ture talks about is returning to your consecrated identity. And in consecrated identity, she means Who are you? Like, let's use Shanique. Is it Shaniqua? Shanika.
Shanika,
Let's use Shanika. So Shanika, the question would be, the practice would be return. That's Sankofa. And now the request to the Spirit is, give me, what ritual might I engage to help me return to who I was before I was an assistant, an administrative assistant, before I was a coordinator, before I was somebody's partner, before I was somebody's parent, before I was somebody's employer, before I was somebody's mother, before I was somebody's daughter, sister, friend. Who was I? What was my sacred assignment? And we have to travel all the way back to who that person is, to your consecrated identity, so that you will know. Traveling on that, then that destination to consecrate, the vehicle for that, the vehicle to get to that destination is what Mama E.T. Hari would say, sacred memory. So what are the ways of knowing and being, the practices that people in either our families, our bloodline, or our collective line, what practices, what capacities do you need? So the podcast is called Fannie Lou's Classroom. Well, I don't know if you all know, but that every time you say Fannie Lou's Classroom, and by calling it Fannie Lou's Classroom, you are calling forth a particular capacity of Mother Fannie Lou Hamer. Now, I don't know what particular capacity you're calling on, but for instance, let's just say, I would imagine, I don't have to imagine, that one of the capacities she was fortified by the Spirit and showed fortitude every time she continued to go register to vote, every time she was denied, every time she marched, even going all the way to the Democratic convention, being seated and then telling her story was an act of fortitude. Right. So when I think about what do I need in this day of time to continue to stand against the faces of empire, to continue to stand against the faces of structural injustice, and not only to stand against structural injustice, but to actually see that there really is no hierarchy of oppressions. So to connect the oppression that I may hold at the intersections as a Black woman, and then place your other intersections there with other people across the world who are experiencing similar kinds of oppressions. What do I need to withstand? And what do I need? I need fortitude. I need to be able to have my feet planted and come what may, know that I will not be moved. So when I call out a name, as a ritual, right? As a ritual practice, when I call out the name of someone that I need to assist me on the other side of time, we're going to have a libation service, which is a ritual. A libation is what? A prayer. It is an invocation. It is a call to worship. And people say, call out the names, and we get to call it any old name. I mean, we be calling names.
Right.
We don't know if those folks are well or
That's
not
right.
well. We just start calling names. And the problem with calling those names is that you don't know the energy that is attached to the name. You got to be strategic in the calling. So the question would be, as a collective and as an individual, what do we need as a people?
That's
as a people, we need fortitude. We need fortitude not to give up the fight. We need the fortitude of our ancestors, not only in the respectable civil rights movement, but our ancestors in the Black Power movement, in the Black nationalist movement.
Right.
We need the fortitude and the foresight of a brother Fred Hampton, who said all power to all the people.
That's right.
That you might kill the revolutionary, but you'll never kill the revolution. We need that kind of sight, that kind of witness. And that is how, when you engage in the practice of Sankofa, the ritual becomes the libation. It becomes calling out the names and pouring liquid into the earth, or even ingesting it into yourself. And as you ingest it, you identify those names, those capacities. You attach the capacity with the name and say, this is what I need every single day, or this is what I need to finish this task, or this is what I need to face this situation.
And wow. You got Shanique over here in tears. She don't have her. She gonna have you in here like she had me and Howard. And it happens before
Because
you
here's
know
the
it.
thing.
Yes.
Because here's the thing, y'all.
Yeah.
What structural oppression does is it deletes us, it depletes us, it breaks us down bit by bit and piece by piece until we are so confused about who we are. We don't know what our purpose is. We don't know where we belong. And this is why self-help is like $1 trillion ministry. Why? $1 trillion
Yeah.
industry. Why? Because don't nobody know what they're supposed to be doing.
Mhm.
Don't nobody remember their consecrated identity. But Mama Sabonfu Somé, who is of the Dagara people of Burkina Faso, West Africa, says to us about the Dagara tradition that when you come to this side of time, you make a sacred agreement because you know already what your consecrated identity is, and that you spend your life in this plane of consciousness, always trying to get back to it, to retrieve, to member. So the
Yeah.
purpose of our lives are to remember what that consecrated identity was. This was the mission of Jesus. Jesus was clear about what his consecrated identity was. He came to do a particular work, and in so doing, he gave out the invitation for others to follow, right? Even the invitation to those who were in his religious tradition, who were too defiant,
Yeah.
who were too hoodwinked, who were too bamboozled to even consider that the Spirit may have been moving through a particular. Gotta know the activism is not just, the activism of the soul is equally as important as the activism on the streets.
Come on.
Because if you cannot engage
Ooh, come
in the
on.
activism of your soul, of your spirit, I want to say something, but I don't want to get this in trouble. But let me just
Come
say
on.
this right
Come
here.
on.
I'm going to hop off and hop on. And this is me. This is not Fannie Lou. This is me. If you cannot engage of the activism of your soul, and this is why everybody don't understand what a ritual is, because you might actually be engaging ritualistically, right, and not have the language. If you are engaging in this kind of heteroglossia, the language of the pre-psyche, to others it might sound like you are out of order in a worship service. I'm off of that.
Come, okay.
I simply want to say this, that ritual is like the air that we breathe. We need ritual because ritual provides for us a sacred container. It is the container that in which we function. We do nothing. I mean, you brush your teeth every day. You take a shower, give or take, every day, depending on what your situation is. There are certain things, some of you say your grace over your food. These things that you do, like my daughter, she has a thing, we not splitting the pole. Now people would say, well, see, that's superstition. That ain't God. This is her ritual. I want my entire family to walk in this line, to walk this way. I don't know what that's connected to in her. I'm just saying, y'all, is that the connection is so much deeper. And I don't want folks to be fearful of it because they think it's not Christian.
Yeah.
It's absolutely Christian. Washing feet, Maundy Thursday is a ritual.
That's right.
Good Friday, the observance of Good Friday is a ritual. Every Sunday you come to church, you're engaging in a ritual. Not just the various rituals in that Sunday. Coming to communal worship is a ritual, y'all. And some of you, there has been a yearning inside of you to know more. You want to know more. You want to know more. You can't quite explain it. You don't know. You done found out your ancestry on ancestry.com, 23andMe. You want to know more, but in your running around in your mind somewhere are the caricatures that Western Christianity and Western society have created for you to suggest that anything beyond what you know today is heresy, is antithetical, is demonized, is problematic, because they create the void And for whom does the void benefit?
Right. Right. That's right. And I'm glad you said that, because I think, and I'm gonna go back to when you said it could be your own bloodline, it could be also those communal, right, names that we call on, because I can just say from my personal experience, this goes back to the laying out on the floor, right? Because something happened prior to me coming to DC with my family in Stone Mountain, Georgia, and for a couple of years, my aunt would always say, "Oh, you get this from this side of the family," like in terms of what I felt I was called to do, right, which is to be engaged in language I'm using here is justice movements, right? But I'm constantly understanding in a different way as I continue to go down this path, right? But just for the sake of the conversation, justice movements. But in what I sensed was I felt I was outside of most people in my family, that nobody really understood it or cared about it, etc. So I was like, I don't know where this comes from, and sometimes feeling like somewhat of an outcast, if I can say it. That's too strong of a word to use, but. And so my aunt kept saying it for a few years, and then we were in Stone Mountain, Georgia. She gave me an envelope full of census data, write-ups, etc. And I started thumbing through it, right? And I said, "Well, who was this woman?" Because she's showing me how I think we were about maybe 4 generations, and how people were named after certain people in the family. So you saw the same name circulating for a reason, why they would name the child that, and then she ran down maybe 3 or 4, I'm saying great, great, greats and great, 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 greats. And she said they were clan mothers, right, in the Cherokee Nation. And I said, really, what's a clan mother? What do they do? What are their responsibilities? So she's telling me all this. I said, well, this is kind of making sense now to me, right? So I was kind of dealing with that, and that's when I met you and Dr. Mama Itahari at Howard, when she said some things to me that she just met me. Like, she had no way of knowing. And I think you started and she finished it. But I'm saying that you're right, because I'll go back to something she said the last time she was on here, and she said, in Christian tradition, we cite, God knew me before I was formed in my mother's womb. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. And she's saying you already were consecrated before you came into this world. But what happens, social systems, could be your family system you were born into, it disrupts that, and you're totally disconnected from that. And so you're over here doing X, Y, and Z, and that's not even where you're supposed to be. You're living out what someone else has put on you, and you have to find out what you said earlier, right? And I was like, that is so true. And I think it's so important for us to kind of look at, well, let me think about who's in my family. And I'm gonna say this: I was just home with my mother, and for whatever reason, we just never talked. I never asked her questions about growing up in Northern Alabama. I don't know why I didn't. And so this time I just happened to ask her, I said, where were you when King was killed? Where were you when Medgar was murdered? Where were you when Malcolm was assassinated? What did the community do? She said, oh yeah, I remember when that happened. We then boycotted all the white businesses. Everybody in the community decided we weren't going to shop there. I said, I just never heard. Then she told me a story about her going to, when I guess it was on the verge of segregation, and how, what she did in order to make sure that bus picked her up like they were supposed to. They would drive past the black kids and not pick them up for school. And how she went and called the Board of Education herself, like, you come get me or it's going to be your problem. And I'm just like, you did that? My mother, she's really, to meet her, you would think she's very mild-mannered. Like, I never remember her raising her voice. And when she would get mad, like, her voice never was raised, right? So I just never knew. I was like, well, actually, then that makes sense too. It's my mother. And I guess for me, it also helped me to open up when I think about names you need to call, to understand that, to your point, the energy that you're inviting, it doesn't always look a certain way. So we also need to be able to, how can we really take a deeper look at people and really see them beyond the exterior and what they project, right? And to know more about who they are. And so for whatever reason,
right.
Right. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, so it's not that the energy doesn't look a certain way. It is that the voids that we experience as a collective, in order to fill those voids, the reason why those voids remain is because we are not filling them with the capacities that our ancestors have waiting for us. And in order to fill those with the capacities that our ancestors had waited for us, we have to be in constant communication with our ancestors. But it seems like the only ancestors any of us have are Jesus, Martin Luther King, and Rosa Parks when it comes to the names that we call.
Right.
And it is because this term ancestors, again, is so filled, so charged for people. But friends, again, I just want to turn you to your text.
Right. Come on.
The word ancestor is consistently throughout both testaments, and particularly I can think of it in one place prominently. Well, one, I think, is it Matthew that lays out, or is it Mark? One of them that lays out the ancestral lineage, right? And such begat, such and such begat, such and such begat. But then in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1b, I think it is. And it says, it is because of the faith or the ancient wisdom of your ancestors. Boom. Here's the whole layout. Let's park here for right quick, y'all. This is a great example, y'all. This is a great example. Let's walk back to Hebrews chapter 10. This is my favorite passage. Those of you who are listening who know me, you know this story because this is my pocket preaching. It's my pocket sermon text.
Come on,
right?
you got to have that.
Great example. Walk back to chapter 10, begin with verse 32, go down to 39, and this is a paraphrase. The paraphrase says something like, remember everybody else because you knew that there was a greater reward. Like, so don't give away all your confidence because you need that confidence to persevere. Go down to 39 says, and listen, we don't shrink back because we are lost. We shrink back. We don't shrink back at all because we know from whom, this is a paraphrase, we know from whom we come. We come from folk who were X, Y, and Z and are not lost, but are saved. What are we going to put in saved? We come from folk who did not fear death, but ran toward it. Then from 1039, you get to 11:1. Now that you understand who you are, whose you are, where you come from, and why you need to persevere, it is now faith. Now that that's grounded, now faith is the substance of things hoped for. It is the evidence of things unseen. And 1b or 2a, whichever that one says, it says, and it was because of their faith. It was because of the faith of the ancestors that such and such and such and such and such and such, right? It was because, let me make sure you could take, can you hear me?
Yeah, you went out for a minute. Yeah.
Can you hear me, Danielle?
Yes.
Okay, so let me come back. That's because, my bad, y'all, I didn't put my phone on do not disturb and people keep calling. So it was because of their faith, right? Now put your pen right there in terms of why, if there is nothing else that you see, that you will understand that the writer of Hebrews is trying to get them to come back to the assembly. They have dispersed and have stopped coming. They have dispersed and they have stopped coming because they are scared. They are scared they are scared at what the empire is doing. Now, then the writer starts listing out this hall of faith, like such and such was promised this, such and such was promised this, and then go to chapter 11, verse, I think around, it might start at 13, might be like 13 through 16, where it says something like this. This is from memory in a paraphrase. It says something like, all of these died
right
without having received the promise. But what they saw it in the distance, my God, today. What's that? That's a capacity to see beyond what a current circumstance is.
Come on.
And how do we get that capacity? By tapping in and calling for that same energy from our ancestors that we know who had that ability. Who in your personal lineage had that ability? Who in our collective lineage has that ability? Those are the names that we need to call, because that's the particular energy we need.
Yes. And then I think about, I was waiting on you to go on down to 12 and 1 because we love to say that too.
What's the 12 and 1?
Therefore, we are surrounded by this great cloud.
Yeah, there you go.
You see, and that's what I stopped. I'm like, you read this, but you're reading it.
Yeah. And so then if we are surrounded by this great cloud of witnesses, who are the witnesses? They're the ancestors.
That's right. That's right.
Who do you think the witnesses are, friends? The witnesses are the ancestors. Who are the ancestors? Go back and read the Hall of Faith.
Right.
They're their ancestors. So if they can call their ancestors, friend, you can call yours.
You can call yours. That's right. And so that collective lineage too, like I always encourage, and I know here at the church, particularly in the justice ministry, we do. I'm always very adamant about that. Not just, and even when we do like any kind of historical month, like Women's History Month, Black History Month, don't send me a list of names, that we just the usual names or what people would see as safe names to call. I'm looking for everybody.
Because you know who I'm looking for?
Who you looking for?
Let's go here, because I love this. We talking about justice.
Yes, come on.
Because the people be respectable in the church house, Reverend. They, even like justice issues around the women's tea and the mothers, and even like things like Mother's Day, we only call the respectable names. We call the names of the women who was in the church. But baby, I want to hear folks call the name of Fannie Shakur.
Come on.
I want to hear the names of folks. I want to hear them call Nahanda Abia.
You went out again, Melva. We can't hear you. We can't hear you. We still can't hear. You got to run them names back. You went out again. I don't know if I think your connection is going in and out for us. So you were running names at who you want to hear.
I said, can you hear me now?
Yeah, try it now. Yes, try it now.
Okay. I said, I want to hear the names of Fannie Shakur.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if we're going to call a name,
yes.
If we need a capacity, my God, how could we not need the capacity, the fortitude, and the courage, the courageous witness of a pregnant woman who was only one of two women who were arrested and jailed on trumped up charges, who was only given milk and bread to eat to nourish her unborn child, and defended and freed herself in the case against the Panther 21. Why don't we ever call Fannie Shakur's name in church? I want to hear the name of Asada.
Yes.
I want to hear Asada Shakur,
yes,
who was also jailed and liberated by her comrades from the jail because they knew that they would kill her, and then left to be exiled. The sacrifice, my God, to give up never being able to come back to the only place you've known as home.
Mm-hmm.
To also represent yourself and to free yourself. And there are martyr names, right? We don't have to go back that far. There are martyr names.
Come on.
I want to hear those particular names that we don't call on Mother's Day, names that we don't call when we're talking about rights movements. And I acknowledge and I honor Mama Fannie Lou and Mama Ella Baker. But there was also the Asadas and the Nahanda Abia Dunes. There was also folks in the Black nationalist movement who equally fought and put their lives on the ground for us. So much so that even when we prepare to fix our mouths to talk about how far folks have fallen, like a mother of Fannie, honey, what would you expect? Where else would one turn when, just like the Vietnam War, many of our fathers and some of our mothers who fought in that war and came home to a country that still didn't acknowledge it, couldn't get a job? The same with someone like a Fannie, who was blackballed because she was a part of the Black Panther Party, who could not keep a job. How was she to sustain herself? And the only thing that she could turn to help her to escape was a narcotic.
Mm-hmm.
So we leave their names out because they're not respectable enough. They don't fit the mold. They don't fit. Yeah. They don't fit what we see as justice fighters And that's a problem because they want us to call their names because they have something to give us.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah. And thank you for calling the names. And I hope that and I know I always watch the show over and over again. I hope many others will do the same and hear all the names you called today that's unfamiliar to them, and go to research those names and to learn about those folks, right? And hopefully and then doing that rabbit hole, if you like me, you're going to run into some other names that you need to know. So I thank you for that, because that's important. And that's why we sit in this classroom every week, because the idea is for all of us to keep learning. I feel like I'm always in a dynamic learning community. I love to learn from other people. As they say, if you're the smartest one in the space, you in the wrong space. And
That's
so
right.
I appreciate you coming in. The hour always goes so fast. So I'm going to say to you, like I say to everybody who comes on, we have to have you back for two reasons. One, you have so much more to share. And secondly, for some reason, your internet was just going in and out too much today, and we need we need to hear every word that Dr. Melva says. Yes. So not only bring you back here, but I certainly want to invite you also back to Friendship West to do some more of the work, and even to have some of these conversations here in person where we really set something up where we can have some real substantive time with you. That. So that's going to be needed, and it's important. I think it's going to be important for us as we do this movement building work. Because for me, I think Sankofa is a practice that I know I use when I'm thinking about how we're going to do what we do. Right. For me, it is part of movement building. I don't do it without it. So we definitely want to have you back. But before we get off, I usually like to ask, I'm going to ask you this question, but I wanted to kind of go back to two things. One thing you're currently doing, I want you to tell the people about. And the second, just to talk about how I was grinning from ear to ear when this was announced, and I read in your bio, it was fresh again. So I'm going to start with that, and I'll end with the second thing. So in October of 2022, y'all listen what I'm going to say. The Smithsonian National Museum for African American History and Culture acquired and ascensioned artifacts from Pink Road Chronicles into the museum collection. Did y'all hear what I said? Who do y'all? I like passing and say, y'all don't look impressed. Y'all got some of the Smithsonian. So but I think that's so significant, because what it said to me was, and I always look at you and some other, people that I consider comrades, right, and friends and sisters who do your own work without physical sanctuary, right? And you do it. You got a lot of lanes that you're in. And so when I read that the first time you announced it, I was like, come on. It just shows that do what you are called to do, right? And this is what happened, because I think that's amazing that what you have done, that it is now preserved in history for generations to come, right? And then we'll be calling your name. Well, I'm with you. We're about the same age, so, other generations be calling your name, right? But I think that's so important. I just think it just underscores the importance of why it's so to do what you have called to do, walk in your gift and your calling, and not worry about the others. Or like you said, though, the work of going back to, and you were challenging us, right? Go back to who you were before. You were all these other things. And that's just a testament to me of, you're a testament of what that means to do that and what happens when you do. Yeah. So I wanted to have to say that. They can read it. I know they can read it. They go read your full bio, but I wanted to make sure I said that out loud, because that's just amazing, a testament to that. And then talk to us about the One Love Festival in Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yes. So you all see I'm repping that One Love Festival merch, which you can get at me to get yours. Y'all, the One Love Festival really is a love story. If I could just keep it real, it's a love story between my spouse and I. I shared with him that and Danielle, because we are of similar age. I don't know if you remember in the mid-90s, there used to be something called the Tampax Total U Tour. Tampax was the corporate sponsor, and it was really like a Black Women's Expo. And since then, I have always desired and wanted to sort of just travel and do what I'm doing, like engage and encourage women and people and folk to really return to their consecrated identity. And so I was sharing that with my spouse, and who is in this field, has done music and festivals, and together he heard my cry, and we created the One Love Festival. The One Love Festival is a now 3-day arts and cultural festival that centers African and African diaspora art and history via music, via entrepreneurship, wellness, and innovation. The first night on the 27th, it is June 27th through the 29th, is an exhibition. From April 1st to May 5th, actually, we hosted our very first Artistic Soul Conversation Artist in Residency program. We had an artist from Houston, Texas. His name is Anjoubert Matoyer. Anjoubert was recently noted for his creation of the life-size sculpture of Congresswoman Barbara Jordan there in Houston. He was here with us for a month, and he created art for the exhibition that will be called Speaking in Tongues, from Africa to Louisiana to Digital Hush Harbors and Urban Networks. We will release that exhibit on the 27th. And then on the evenings of the 28th and the 29th, we are super excited to announce our biggest ticketed performances yet, with the likes of D Smoke, Malmina Youssef, aka Mumu Fresh, Rock, Chelsea Green and the Green Project, Asan Dahanu, and Eloquent Soul, Alter Egos, an all women's go-go band, and Black Ciphers out of Charm City, Baltimore, Maryland. And then during the day, we have a free, open to the public community conversations around these issues that you and I have just been speaking with. You can find out more information at www.onelovefestival.com. And we are encouraging you to come from Dallas, Houston. This is also a ministry. While it begins as a love story, this is an extension of our ministry. This is the way my spouse and I co-pastor through this One Love. And then Danielle, if I could say one more thing, well, hold on, let me back up and just simply say that what we do know, y'all, is that our faith-filled folk like music. Yes. I want us to stop thinking that, right? Yes. And we like good music. So we have curated. You won't hear a lot of commercial artists here on our stage, but we have curated folks that we believe have a message that have some consciousness to them. Yes. The other thing I want to mention to you all is the week before the One Love Festival, June 18th through the 20th, at Wake Forest University School of Divinity, along with our Faith Compass Center, we are hosting restoring and restoring and storying theology, sacred memory, health and wellness in African American communities. This event is 100% free. There is no cost. Now, if you don't live in the area, of course, you'll have to get there and have to take your lodging. But it is myself, Dr. E.T. Hari Toure, and I have designed a phenomenal Summer Institute, and Dr. Ivory Session and Dr. Reginald Wade Williams, who I know is family at the Fannie Luce Classroom, are the facilitators. And so us four will be engaging in this act of transformative storytelling, showing people how to do exactly what we just talked about here. And it is free, Free.
Well, thank you, Dr. Melva. We definitely going to have you back, and I'll definitely talk to you offline about coming back to Friendship West. We need to curate something here once again, I think over a couple of days at least, to have this conversation and to get us prepped, even ready for the work that we know we've been called to do in this branch of Zion, as they say in the church, of what we're called to do. But I think and there's some things I know we can use, and it'd be useful for us to connect with one another, to really not so much have our faith be lived out as an individual, making it so individualistic, but certainly more communal. So Fannie Luce Classroom, let's give it up for Dr. Melva Sampson for being in the classroom today. We appreciate your wisdom, your knowledge, your beautiful and warm spirit, as always, comes through even via technology. And it's so funny, we had Dr. Fallon Wilson on last week talking about the digital divide and, tech, et cetera. And it was funny because she had technical challenges. I said, now, how do you have technical challenges?
I know. That's my girl.
I love me some Fallon. She was
Dr.
her
Fallon,
full
absolutely.
self. Okay,
Yes.
she was her full self. So it was a good time. But yeah, so we want to definitely have you come back again, and we'll definitely be setting that up because I know your schedule is crazy busy. But we're gonna get on your calendar early for season 5. And so, listen, thank you for tuning in to the final episode of Fannie Lou's Classroom. Thank you for supporting Season 4 of Fannie Lou's Classroom. You can always help us keep this going by purchasing your Fannie Lou Classroom t-shirt. You're viewing on your phone, simply go to friendshipwest.org/justice. Or if you're viewing on another device, you can scan that QR code and you can order your t-shirt and we'll get that out to you as soon as possible. Thank you for your support this season. We look forward to seeing you for season 5, but you can binge seasons 1 through 4 until we get back in the fall for season 5. Until then, we look forward to seeing you next season.
From the church house.